A very warm welcome to everyone tuning in to the third and last day of the symposium at SEAPAVAA's virtual 25th conference. My name is Tee Pao. I am the archivist at the Asia Film Archive in Singapore, and I will be moderating session 6 of the symposium, Adaptability of Archives in Times of Challenges and Opportunities, Part 2. So for this session, we have 3 presentations, and I will be introducing each speaker, who will then have about 20 minutes of time to deliver her presentation. Audience members may enter the questions in the Q&A box below if you're on Zoom, or in the comment box if you're on Facebook Live, which we will then consolidate and discuss after all the presentations are completed. So our first speaker for this session is Dr. Lydia Tang. Dr. Lydia Tang is currently an outreach and engagement coordinator at LYRASIS. Previously, she held archivist positions at the Michigan State University, the Library of Congress, and numerous graduate positions at the University of Illinois, where she received her master's in library and information science and Doctor of Musical Arts degree. She served on the task force to revise best practices on accessible archives for people with disabilities, and also spearheaded founding the SAA, that stands for the Society of American Archivists, Accessibility and Disability section. She is the 2020 recipient of the SAA's Mark A. Green Emerging Leader Award, and was recognized in 3 SAA's council resolutions as a co-founder of the Archival Workers Emergency Fund for spearheading the accessibility and disability sections Archivist at Home document, and for her work in revising the SAA's guidelines for accessible archives for people with disabilities. So the title of her presentation is Protecting Archival Workers with Agile Information and Mutual Aid. Unfortunately, because of the time difference in the US, Dr. Tang is unable to join us live today for the session, but she has pre-recorded her presentation to be played. She's also unable to join for the Q&A at the end as well, but we welcome questions and comments from the audience regarding her presentation, which the organizer will help compile her responses and circulate them. So please do include your email address if you like to receive a response. So I will now pass over the floor to the organizer, who will play her presentation.
Hi, my name is Dr. Lydia Tang, and I'm currently an outreach and engagement coordinator with LYRASIS. But in this presentation, I'll be talking to you about some volunteer projects that I did in March and April 2020. I am presenting from East Lansing, Michigan, and I apologize that this is a pre-recorded presentation. Actually, your conference is in the middle of my nighttime, so I will look forward to hearing from you and answering any questions when it's back in my working hours. So thank you for your flexibility, and thank you for tuning into my presentation. My presentation today is titled Protecting Archival Workers with Agile Information and Mutual Aid. And so I feel kind of silly to recap the past year since we've all experienced this global pandemic, but I can only speak from my personal experience here. I remember vaguely hearing that there was an extremely infectious disease that was spreading overseas, and then it seemed like archival repositories abruptly began closing within a matter of days afterwards, and it was very chaotic. And I remember seeing that archival workers were posting on social media that they were getting laid off and furloughed, and they were desperate for finding opportunities for professional development and training, and also job tasks that they could perform from home. So hence why this document was created. So the Archivist at Home document is something that I started and I spearheaded it with the Society of American Archivists Accessibility and Disability section. This is a section that I had founded with SAA just a couple months earlier. And so as all of this chaos was going on and I was seeing it on social media, I turned to the only thing that I felt confident using. I'm not particularly a technologically savvy person, but I know how to use Google Docs. And I know that information science people, we know how to compile information. And so I started compiling and organizing the information that I saw and also that I knew personally. And then I brought it to the steering committee and we jumped on it, basically. Our idea about the Archivist at Home document was, first of all, to protect as many jobs as we possibly could, because we knew that there was a risk about a preconception with archives that we had to be working with the stuff, the collections. And so if we were not able to work with the physical collections, then what is keeping us from getting furloughed or fired? And so we had to combat that. We had to find and create lists and resources that showed what rich work can be done at home. And from that, we also wanted to put our foot in the door and push further on that if archivists can't be productive working from home, what can that also open up for other people that need to work from home, whether it's if they have a disability or any other reason too. And so if we can expand this concept of archival labor to be able to work from home, we're really advancing our cause right there. And so what we did, we started sharing this editable Google Doc on social media, and it actually became, it actually took off. It was really amazing to see. There were over 100 people logged in at a single given moment, looking at the document and actively building it at the same time. And so I truly feel it was a collective effort. And it was an amazing act of professional solidarity and information sharing. It really took off, particularly when archivist memes created a meme about the Archivist at Home document here, and I'll try to visually describe it for you. So it's a young man is typing at a laptop and he says, "Hey guys, I'm feeling nervous about the impact of COVID-19 on my career as an archivist. Any tips?" And three very burly men write back, "Hey champ, there are actually many tasks archivists could do while working remotely. SAA's Accessibility and Disability section has a great resource available just for this situation." Seconding the SAA resources king, also keep an eye on the displaced archivist hashtag. In addition to providing a sense of shared experience with other archivists, it's being used by the SAA to look into providing relief to those who need it. And I wanted to do a little digression from talking about the Archivist at Home document to the displaced archivist hashtag. So this was originally for archivists reporting layoffs and furloughs. It also was used for other examples of archivists simply working from home, but this hashtag, organizers of the Future Archival Workers Emergency Fund were using this to spread a survey to get a sense of how COVID was impacting archival workers and who was getting laid off and how. And so this allowed us to get enough information to propose and create the Archival Workers Emergency Fund. So I had spearheaded this with Jessica Chappell and other members of the Archival Workers Organizing Committee. We had realized at the time that the Society of American Archivists had a National Disaster Recovery Fund for archives, but there wasn't one for archival workers. And so this is what we had built. And to date, it has dispersed over $140,000 and helped over 177 archival workers. So back to the Archivist at Home document. As I said, it was being created together, and it was actually pretty remarkable to see how it happened. People would come with their questions and leave their questions, and other people would come with answers and leave their answers, and it became a working dialogue on the page. And so you can see this in the screenshot of the communication that happened on this page as we were building it out. The Archivist at Home document also was used for close the libraries and close the archives calls. And this is an example of that for, this is a screenshot of the Association of Canadian Archivists in the president's message, it's time to close the archives. And so they referenced the Archivist at Home document specifically to show what types of resources archivists, what types of tasks that archivists could do working from home. So let's now step through this document a little bit. We'll start at the introduction. I wrote, Archivists at Home began as a brainstorming advocacy tool by the Accessibility and Disability section of the Society of American Archivists for developing a more flexible concept of archival labor, whether it is archivists working from home due to COVID-19 or archivists with disabilities. The document has evolved in scope to address the needs of the archival community grappling with COVID-19 broadly, ranging from the workplace, choosing to temporarily close an archive, to working from home, supporting student and contingent workers, and archival resilience to COVID-19. And now I'll go through a couple of the headers. So we have resources and links for if your archival shop at this time was still in operation before closing, and then resources and links about choosing to close the shop. Again, it's about a very specific time during the pandemic progression for the United States. There's a header about things that archivists probably can't do remotely, but you can see that it kind of helped archivists think through processes. So is it possible to bring home collection materials to work on, to digitize? And this document was never meant to be a policy or be particularly prescriptive, but I hope it helped individuals think through what needed to be considered during the process of various approaches that way. There's the meat of this document is things that archivists can do from home or anywhere else. And so a lot of these ideas are rainy day projects, infrastructure projects, documentation projects, metadata cleanup, donor relations, outreach. And occasionally, since this was curated by the Accessibility and Disability section, we took the mic sometimes to draw attention to various aspects that we really felt strongly about, particularly from our vantage point. And so in this particular case here, we say, take the time to question policies and workflows to be more efficient and inclusive. And we link to this crowdsourced document that we had championed a couple of weeks earlier about inclusive hiring and recruiting processes for people with disabilities. And then we also linked out to Grayson Brillmeyer's excellent Identifying and Dismantling White Supremacy in Archives document. These are other examples of the resources that were linked in the document, which became sort of like, it became kind of like a directory of ideas for archivists to come by. And so maybe these were very familiar for archivists, or maybe they were completely new. But this way it compiled all these ideas together about linked data, including opportunities for archivists to learn new skills or connect to help larger crowdsourcing projects. And you can see that there was also some dialogue that was happening in this document about protecting student workers and volunteers, as well as information about web archiving and, again, accessibility nudges about websites. And then also about self-care and things that we can work on ourselves. So whether it's mental health, whether it's recovering from toxic work environments and trying to find ways that we can build back a more humane work environment. We wanted to push these ideas forward since we had the attention of such a large audience. The continuing education section sounded like a lot of people were really enjoyed this section. It seemed like program managers from various organizations would provide promotions like what you see here for discounted and sometimes free opportunities for continuing education. And crowdsourcing projects also crowdsourcing projects also became very popular. I know anecdotally that many library staff in different types of positions, whether it's circulation or public services or other types of staff, might be redirected towards these types of crowdsourcing and transcription projects, especially early in the pandemic. There were the document also compiled links to various archival programs and products and remote work tools. So while more than a year into the pandemic, it will seem very old hat to see these tools linked here. We also wanted to make sure that for people that were completely new to this type of work environment, that they had as many resources as possible to be successful. But this was just a snapshot in time. So 2020 was a very difficult year on so many levels, and it seemed like each month came with a new crisis, whether it was wildfires or whether it was police brutality. It just kept coming, and it was just incredibly brutal for so many people. And I think all of us in the steering committee, we were just overwhelmed and overworked and burned out. And we just, this document just became too large to keep updating. And so it froze in time. And other resources came, like OCLC's REM project, which is a really wonderful research project. And so we didn't hear much more about it. We were very grateful for the recognition we received. The Society of American Archivists gave us a council resolution because of spearheading the Archivist at Home document. But I think for myself and many others, we didn't really know who used it or whether it really was meaningful to anybody. And so I was very grateful when the conference organizers approached me to submit a proposal for their conference here. But I did say that I don't really know how this document was used. And so I hoped it was useful, but I didn't really have much to say. And so this is when I created a survey to try to get some feedback and testimonies about what this document meant to other people. And while I wish that I had gotten some feedback more specifically about the use for audiovisual archivists, the feedback that I did get was a little bit more general, but I think it covered the goals that we had set out to do, which was really wonderful to see. So this is just a snapshot of some of the feedback that we received. It helped advocate for my use of working from home, which was needed in order to protect my health and keep my job. Extremely useful to help fill in hours for staff, student workers, especially the section on professional development. I used it to develop ideas to lobby my corporation to keep the archivists on the payroll, even though we didn't have access to the archives anymore. It helped. It allowed us to successfully advocate for the continued employment of our student assistants and give them meaningful work to do during the shelter-in-place order. And at the bottom is a tweet from PJ Nastasi, which I am including with permission. I wanted to share this incredible resource. Sorry if I'm late about this, but may as well amplify it. Shared with me by my unit's student assistant. this is another testimony from the survey. And so this person disclosed that they have a disability, and so now they're using it to justify continued occasional work from home as an accommodation. And this document was helpful to be able to show that there is a precedent in the field, which is really, really wonderful to hear, because this shows that that it basically accomplished our goals. So I'm so glad to hear that. So in conclusion, I'd like to circle back to the conclusion of the document. So at this time, it was in April 2020, and the stock market had just tanked, and my newsfeed was just filling up with images of bodies piling up next to freezer trucks that were full in New York City. So this is a very different time than it is for me now. Here in Michigan, we're opening up. Many people are vaccinated, and the mask mandate is no longer in place. So people are walking around without masks, and it seems nearly back to normal, whatever that means. But at the time, this conclusion was in a different world. And so I said, let's fight back against COVID-19. A possible narrative could be that COVID-19 caused a global shutdown, the loss of hundreds of thousands of lives, and possibly the worst recession since the Great Depression. In the archives world, it has caused the temporary shutting down of many archives. It may also cause permanent closure to some and jobs like layoff. How can we combat this narrative? If we look in hindsight at COVID-19, what will we have done, and what did we learn? In the face of COVID-19, we protected our colleagues by creating an archival workers emergency fund, by lobbying for archives to temporarily close for researchers and staff safety, close the archives, close the libraries. And we learned that archives are more than physical records and buildings, and archival labor doesn't have to be in an office. And so I think we've accomplished that too. So I'm really glad that I could be a part of all that, and I'm really excited for how the profession charts its way forward from here. So again, I'm sorry that I won't be around to answer the Q&A live, but I would love to hear your feedback about this presentation or about your own experience navigating this past year. And I hope you have a great conference. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Lydia, for this really inspiring initiative. Our second speaker is Alan Han, who is the acquisition manager of the copyright content acquisition department at the Shanghai Audiovisual Archive at the Shanghai Media Group. So the title of her presentation is A New Attempt in Making Audiovisual Archives Serve the Public in the Digital Age. So over to you, Alan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alan Han from Shanghai Audiovisual Archives. Nice to meet you. The case I would like to share today is Chinese Archives Online. China Archives Online is a archives resource sharing and exchange platform, hereinafter referred to as the platform, and it's a bilingual website in both Chinese and English, and a digital audiovisual archives display and a content sharing platform for the general public and the professional users. The platform mainly uses the audiovisual archives, which are the most intuitive records. The platform mainly uses audiovisual archives of live conditions in a period of time as the carrier. The platform selects a batch of audiovisual archives that can show Chinese history, folklore, culture, people, and the current status, and provides online browsing service with detailed bilingual cataloging information. Using the platform as a case study, I will explore new ideas for the preservation, development, and application of audiovisual archives with everyone here through the current state of the platform's operation. In fact, in our exchange with our overseas counterparts and clients, we have been hearing voice about where to go for Chinese audiovisual archives, how to retrieve them, and what is the specific content of these audiovisual archives. Against this background, Shanghai Audiovisual Archives initiated the creation of a platform through which it hopes to provide users, especially overseas users, with access to Chinese audiovisual archives and to show overseas users China's past and present through audiovisual archives and catalog information in English, and is to enhance cultural exchange between countries. Let me briefly guide you through our platform. We can access the platform by the URL shown. In the head of the website is our new online exhibition area, where we now have 3 themed exhibitions. We can see Colorful China, One Belt, One Road, and the Shanghai promo. We can click in and see that. Colorful China online exhibition brings together a collection of documentaries filmed around 1950, documenting 5 major cities and areas in China. Shot in color, these documentaries are a vivid recreation of China in that period. And the platform also opened 4 collections. I highly recommend it that you take a look at our Shanghai News Archives, which is the first time this collection has been opened to the public. These are local news from Shanghai from the 1950s to the 1980s, covering all aspects of social life, including education, medicine, sports, etc. And we can see these are all historic news from Shanghai. And this news archive, for example, documents and a new residential neighborhood in Shanghai in 1950s. And we can see the housing conditions in Shanghai at the time. This was the scene of house moving. We can see we don't have a professional house moving company at that time. So people help each other to move. The living condition were way better than that before. We can see the new residential area. And this is the outside of it. And we can see the inside. We can see each apartment was equipped with water supplying system and the gas system. So it's really, you can see water supply system and the gas system. We can also see some cataloging information about this audiovisual archive, and these fields are all searchable. Let's go back to the front page. This is the entry point to our archives collection activities. And this section below shows some of the projects and the products that our archives have developed by using the audiovisual archives. Here is some recent news from our archives. At the bottom of the page is one of our archival culture and creative products, Shanghai Archival Map, which I can introduce in detail afterwards. Through the establishment of the platform, our archives can be freed from the limitation of the venue and provide the public with retrieval and access service to audiovisual archives. Experts and scholars from across disciplines can use the audiovisual archives to support their research and share their findings on the platform, program producers can search and retrieve program materials and complete a set of authorizations through the platform. Historic enthusiasts and the general public can visit online exhibitions or participate in the research of audiovisual archives. At the same time, we can bring in some social resources through the platform, such as launching a call for archives on the platform, provide online thematic booths, and bringing together more valuable audiovisual archives and academic resources. Let me now give an overview of the platform and its feature. The content of the platform is mainly sourced from the collection of Shanghai Audiovisual Archive, and it is divided into 3 main sections. The first part is the copyrighted content from SMG, the group to which our archives belong to, including all the news program archives, outstanding self-produced documentaries, outtakes, and science educational film produced by the Shanghai Science Education Film Studio. And this part of collection, as the co-collection of Shanghai Audiovisual Archives, is also open to the public through the platform for the first time. The second part of collection is collected by our archives from the society over the years, including film reels purchased in the market and auctions, and films in the public domain. The third part of collection is the commercial material represented by us for other archives. Next, I will present an evaluation criterion for the selection of contents for the platform. After completing the content reserves for the platform, the project team built an evaluation mode for the audiovisual archive to clarify what kind of content is suitable for sharing on the platform and can create greater content value for the platform. Starting from the experience in daily operation of audiovisual archives, the team first cleared a point of view, not that the more precious audiovisual archives are more suitable for publishing on the platform. In many cases, audiovisual files that reflect ordinary life are more socially needed and become popular. Therefore, the project team selected 5 parameters for content selection through thinking about the kernel of audiovisual archives. Starting from the social hotspots and the core value of archives, the project team focused on social needs, archive scarcity, historic significance, social and cultural significance, and whether the audiovisual archives could be redeveloped and are used to access the value of the archives. Social needs based on the organization's daily operation experience, analyze the videos with a large amount of daily query and high click-through rate of the official account. These archives have one thing in common, that is, they carry the people's memory of the past life. For example, the videos filmed street food shops in the 1970s, street scenes in the 1950s, Shanghai specialties, and the China's time-honored shop. Scarcity. In the internet era of information explosion, the internet is flooded with similar contents, some even pirated content. From this point of view, the operation team eliminated some common contents on the internet and selected exclusive content. For example, the Shanghai News Archive collection and the excellent documentary collection that were open this time are our exclusive content. Historic significance, selected audiovisual archives that can represent different eras or have a profound impact on later generations. By disciplining these audiovisual archives that record events that affect a certain era, the public will recall historical events and reflect on reality. For example, in China, the large-scale relocations carried out by the construction of elevated roads in Shanghai have affected the entire society and changed the lives of a generation. These events are of great archive preservation value. Social-cultural significance intuitively reflect people's association of social and cultural background and the interest of related things. The platform serves as the window of the Shanghai Audiovisual Archive and The selected archives must reflecting the unique urban spirit, culture, and group memory of Shanghai. For example, only the local residents of Shanghai have experienced housing shortage and the unique scale of Shanghai good embodied. Redevelopment of the archives, since the content is expected to archive value added through the platform, including whether the content can be repeatedly developed and utilized, whether it has a certain value of research is the direction of our consideration. Knowing these parameters, we have aggregated the audiovisual archives according to this content, subject, and source. Now we can see our collections. Shanghai Story is a TV series produced by our archives. The program focused on events and the character story in Shanghai's development and the social change. The program used vivid brushstrokes to interpret the meaning of city, starting from precious audiovisual archives, relying on a large number of Shanghai content material as the basis, and maximizing visiting of those who have experienced in the past historical era. Combine the true narration of this historical witness with precious video materials to reconstruct the image of Shanghai and show the spirit of city. Shanghai News Archive, as an audiovisual archives organization affiliated to a media organization, Shanghai News Archives is the exclusive content collection of Shanghai Audiovisual Archives, and it is also the first time it has been open to the public on the platform. The news archive is composed of all news programs and outtakes of the news since the establishment of Shanghai TV station, and it is complete. The most precious part of this collection is the Shanghai News shot on film reels from 1985 to 1982, 1958 to 1982. The picture quality of this AV archives is high. The program is well made, so the archives have extremely high value. And we can also see science and education film collection produced by Shanghai Science and Education Film Studio existed between 1956 to year 2000. Shanghai Science Film Studio has produced various types of science and educational film, including news documentaries, popular science films, new technology introduction films, educational films, and travel films. This collection of film was collected and digitally rescued and preserved by our archive. This collection is distinctive, contemporary, and reflective of the spirit of Shanghai and China at the forefront of science education. Over 500 films currently has been cataloged and translated, and the entire collection will be opened gradually. And we can also see documentary collections. This part of collection consists of documentary produced by our group, and we selected representative documentary of various periods. In addition to providing online display and the retrieval of the Shanghai Audiovisual Archives collection, the platform also provides scalable function modules for the online operation of Shanghai Audiovisual Archives. The platform offers an online exhibition function module with the continuous expansion of the scope of socialized service of archives. The extension of archives work continues to expand and is becoming more and more familiar to the public. Taking our archives as an example, the service targets have expanded from TV station to institutional users and scholars. And online archives exhibitions can let the public feel the charm of archive culture more intuitively, and it is also a new direction for redevelopment and the utilization of archives. The entries of these exhibitions are in the banner area of our homepage, and we display in a scrolling mode. Users can also switch tabs to enter different exhibitions. For the archives, this mode solves the problem of venue and save a lot of material cost for offline exhibitions. For the visitors, they are not restricted by time or region anymore. Visitors can visit the website at time to visit the exhibition according to their needs. In the post-epidemic era or facing some other emergencies, online archive exhibition is undoubtedly a mainstream trend. And we also have clues provision and archive collection. All along, the collecting of archives has been carried out through announcements and oral inquiries. Archives collecting information is generally published on paper, media, public accounts, news media, or exhibitions. However, there are many problems with this kind of collecting methods. The most significant is that this kind of archives collecting method is limited by the circulation and the distribution area of the newspaper, and the timeline is relatively short. In addition, the lack of contact channels between archives and the owner of the precious historic materials. Both of the above reasons prevented the collection work from opening up, and the results were not obvious. So the platform set archive collecting pages. A professional archivist is available for follow-up contact. Users can also provide the leads for archives. The platform has also set up a section for our city work project. We have combined historical image with the urban discovery to curate this project featuring historic image. City walk as a new way to understand the story of the city and feel the spirit of city's culture attracts more and more tourists from home and abroad to walk into Shanghai's old building, old neighborhoods, and old alleys to see and experience the city's century-old history up close and personally. These are photos from the offline activities of the project. We experienced the bound roads that day, and you can see that we printed some old photos from our archives and compared them with the current scenes during the walk. Welcome to Shanghai and experience our city walk afterwards. The project team have also designed a cute notebook and some creative stickers. The handbook has illustrations that we have drawn from historic images throughout the page and the QR codes on the page. Combining historical images and written stories, the story of Shanghai's history is condensed into 4 selected working maps through the presentation of artistic hand-drawn maps and the bilingual story of architectural memories. The 4 working routes contain the stories of 20 historic buildings and 17 video pieces of historical information. Users can have a try of our project through the portal on the platform and have a look at our archival map. We have also established a working guide with Baidu Map for the convenience of mobile users. We have also showcased some of the archival culture and the creative products we have developed and the examples of our projects on the platform. We made many attempts these years. For instance, audiovisual archive compilation, multimedia exhibition, offline screenings, archival audiovisual programs in cooperation with TV stations. This section records some attempts of our archive in the development of archival culture and the creative products that helps to provide some inspirations of the development of audiovisual archival culture and creative products for colleagues at home and abroad, and also look forward to receiving opinions and suggestions from the colleagues. The platform also hopes to seek cooperations between various institutions through this section to jointly overcome these shortcomings and to gather the strengths of each other to help the archival culture and the creative work. Our platform also provides a section for publishing the results of historical research based on AV archive resources, the results of digital rescue and the protection projects based on the number of film digitization, and the research and development results of all media projects of historical archives. Currently, the main exhibits are the project of Shanghai Audiovisual Archives with certain research results such as Visual Memorandum of China's Modern Education, or media project in search of Robert de Bessange, and the Chinese Art Master, the predecessor painter video archives. Visual Memorandum of China's Modern Education provides strong evidence for academic research on modern Chinese education. Chinese Art Master, the predecessor Painter Video Archives project, has formed a set of practical experience from film collection, restoration, preservation to utilization from multiple angles, sorting out and protecting and rescuing a series of Chinese culture and Chinese art masters recorded by film. And In Search of Robert de Bazange project is a series of all media projects derived from the true story of the French missionary Robert de Bazange, also known as Rao Jiaju, protecting 3,000 Shanghai refugees during the World War II and its audiovisual archives, including visit to witness, historic backgrounds, and image mining work, academic seminars, oral history project, documentary production, multi-channel, multimedia display, etc., which have had a great social impact and provide ideas for the development of all media projects. The detail of these projects are available on the official platform. I will not introduce it here. The platform provides audiovisual archive retrieval service and opens the audiovisual archives database to the public. User can search the AV archive through the title, keywords, content description, and other fields of the archives. Based on the platform's online discipline on the offline cooperation mode of operation, the platform also sets Insight Messenger and Messenger function modules, mainly for overseas users. It is convenient for users to submit various types of inquiries, copyright use, intention, or project cooperation, etc., real-time transfer for user needs to back-end operation and a maintenance team through the internal letter of the set, which is convenient for the operation and the maintenance team to follow up user needs in a timely manner. The platform has developed a set of front-end interfaces for users with functions such as AV resource display and browsing, text information retrieval and query, and graphic message publishing. At the same time, the corresponding backend information management platform has also been developed. Backend information management platform has a series of basic management functions such as video import, video transcoding, invisible watermark system, user hierarchy management, as well as the automatic generation of QR codes combined with the development of new media platform application, and the automatic push of video and a graphic message to self-media, like WeChat, and other functions with strong practicable and innovation. Finally, let's talk about the significance of the platform's establishment. First of all, we hope that the platform will act as a driving force to help the audiovisual archive to pass on Chinese culture and record the spirit of the city. Archives serve as culture carrier, and the platform serve as a media to inherited national culture. As a more vivid culture carrier, audiovisual archives can directly use the show the past and the present of a city, a nation, and a country, from the microwave to the city skyline. And the audiovisual archives can record the scene at the time in detail and then restore the scene at the time in detail. It can be said that audiovisual archives are the best tool to inspire users to learn about city and the section of culture. Secondly, we hope that the platform will take on a social responsibility to provide quality services. Through the platform, the Shanghai Audiovisual Archives has been able to open its services to the whole society, enhancing its efficiency as a public service institution. The online platform has eliminated the constrictions of time and space, allowing the public to access audiovisual archives and visit online exhibitions anytime, anywhere. Through the real-time participation of users, the operation mode and the service mode of the platform are continuously optimized. User participation also enhances user stickiness and platform's activities. Our archive has previously carried out an archive tracing activity through the form of linkage with platform, WeChat, official accounts, and the traditional media, and successfully found the person involved, which has had a great social influence. The aggregation effect of the platform can also bring together more archive resources, and these archive resources will eventually serve the public, forming a virtuous circle. Thirdly, platforms can also enhance inter-institutional collaboration. The platform serves as a window to discipline and disseminate collection archive resources, R&D capabilities, and various projects, and attract more partners to jointly develop products. The platform can also be used as an inter-institution industry communication platform, choosing to absorb relatively mature development experience in interlibrary communication to use for itself or to help each other institutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ellen. I'm pleased to introduce the last presenter for this session, Christine McKenzie, who is the president of IFLA, that is the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. Christine's career has been in public libraries. She was the CEO of Yarra Plenty Regional Library Service in Melbourne and manager of the Brisbane City Council Library Service, which is the largest public library system in Australia. So Christine has been very active in IFLA and was president-elect 2017 to 2019 and treasurer from 2015 to 2017. She was a co-founder of INELI Oceania, that is the International Network of Library Innovators Oceania, a program funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that provided leadership training for librarians in Australia, New Zealand, and the South Pacific, and which sponsored the formation of the Pacific Libraries Network in 2018. She has been a member of the Australian Government's Public Lending Rights Committee, the Library Board of Victoria's Advisory Committee on Public Libraries, the Victorian Government's Ministerial Advisory Council on Public Libraries, the executive of the Public Libraries Victoria Network, and a juror for the Intelligent Communities Forum. She has also held several roles in ALIA, that is the Australian Library and Information Association, including being the president in 2003 to 2004. She was awarded an ALIA Fellowship in 2008 and the Fala Robert D. Williamson Award in 2012. So the title of her presentation is Libraries and the Pandemic. So over to you, Christine.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of the SEAPAVAA conference this year. Thanks for that introduction, Tee Pao. And I enjoyed listening to Lydia and Ellen's presentations. It was fascinating to see those videos of Shanghai and how life was then. And it's good to hear about what's happening in allied fields. Today I'm talking to you from Melbourne, Australia, where I live. In Australia, we acknowledge the owners of the land on which we meet, and today I'm on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. And I also acknowledge any Indigenous colleagues who have joined us today. I was really pleased to be invited to the SEAPAVAA conference in Noumea in 2019, and I learned a lot about memory, archives, and the philosophy that guides archivists. And I was impressed by the depth of your discussions and your thoughtful approach as you grapple with what and how to preserve historical audiovisual materials. So I'll just, okay. So today I want to talk about libraries and the pandemic and what IFLA is doing to support them. And I'll also be including some information what IFLA is doing in the cultural heritage space. And hopefully you'll recognise some common issues that will resonate with you as I talk about what IFLA and libraries are doing. Now, this is one of my favourite cartoons by an Australian cartoonist called Lunik. And I had it up on my wall when I was CEO of Yarra Plenty Regional Library. And it perfectly captures how I feel depending on where I am and what's happening at the time. I wanted to share it with you to remind ourselves that there are going to be ups and downs, hills and dales, and while we are living in such strange times, there are both exciting opportunities and difficult challenges. I'm coming to the end of my 2-year term as president of IFLA, and it's a pretty good illustration of how I've been feeling being the president in the time of the plague. We've all been impacted by the pandemic, and our lives as they were and as we were expecting them to be have completely changed. And it seems very uncertain how long we're going to be affected by COVID and what the future will look like. But we can see some themes emerging, and I'll talk about these a bit later. Before I talk about the impact of COVID-19, I'd like to just introduce you to IFLA. IFLA is the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. It's the leading international body representing the interests of library and information services and their users. And IFLA is the global voice of libraries. It was founded in 1927 and is based in The Hague in the Netherlands. We've got 1,500 members from over 150 countries, and mainly associations and institutions, and also some personal members. IFLA's got two main roles. Firstly, to advocate for libraries at the highest levels, such as the United Nations, Unesco and WIPO. And secondly, we're here to support the global library field. And since the beginning of the pandemic, IFLA's been facilitating the exchange of information about what and how libraries are managing challenges and opportunities. IFLA, is someone else changing maybe the, or is it just being stupid? So the 60 professional units and 1,200 volunteers are the lifeblood of IFLA and the Library World's Brains Trust, and they provide the research, innovation and knowledge for library professionals and the global library field. And of particular interest to this audience may be the Audiovisual and Multimedia section, AVMS. And this is the international forum for persons working with sound, visual and multimedia resources in every kind of library and information service. And it's responsible for maintaining relationships with relevant IFLA sections and core activities and other professional organisations for audiovisual archives. And so on to 2020, which was quite the year, and it wasn't just about COVID. It was a significant year for highlighting other enormous issues the world's most are facing, and there are three big ones: climate change, public health and social inclusion. As Lydia already said, we had the huge bushfires at the beginning of the year in Australia, the coronavirus and the death of George Floyd in Minnesota. The bushfires in Australia at the beginning of 2020 were devastating. More than 12.6 million hectares burnt, 434 million tonnes of CO2 emitted, 10.6 million Australians worried about theirs and other safety, over 1 billion animals killed. COVID-19 continues to have a huge impact on the world. And the death of George Floyd in Minnesota highlighted the ongoing issues of racism and inequality and caused widespread demonstrations around the world. So while the world can appear to be in crisis, we do have a framework to guide us through to make the world fairer and sustainable. In 2015, the 193 member states of the United Nations adopted Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals and 169 targets. And the United Nations Secretary General at the time, Ban Ki-moon, said that the global goals represent a universal, transformative and integrated agenda that heralds a historic turning point for our world. IFLA participated in developing the 2030 Agenda and was at the table when the goals were being formulated. And since 2012, we've been advocating for 4 key areas to be included: ensuring access to information, safeguarding of cultural heritage, universal literacy, and access to information and communication technologies. To support this work, we have developed the Library Map of the World. The aim of this is to provide national level library data on selected metrics across all types of libraries in all regions of the world. The site also highlights stories from different countries that show how libraries are achieving the SDGs. There are over 40 stories from 25 different countries to inspire and motivate and to amplify the actions of individual libraries around the world and how they're working to make the world sustainable. One of the stories tells how Iraqi libraries build infrastructure and expertise to safeguard and give access to documentary heritage. We know that heritage can be a strategic asset and a driver for peace. Cultural heritage can foster peaceful and inclusive societies by providing communities with a narrative of a common identity. And the goal of this project was to assist Iraqi libraries in training their staff in the latest techniques of preservation and digitisation. And you can read about that on the IFLA website. The Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, have become a core part of IFLA's work in terms of our engagement both with external organisations and with the library field. And this is an ongoing effort built on the energy, ideas and engagement of thousands of librarians around the world. Libraries are championing this agenda, and there's no development without access to information, and there's no meaningful access to information without libraries. And we continue to advocate for the importance of incorporating SDG Target 11.4, strengthen efforts to protect and safeguard the world's cultural and natural heritage international plans. And we recognise there's an urgency about climate change. Libraries have a role to play in providing access to information to ensure that people can make good decisions. Climate change affects everything, including our cultural and documentary heritage. At IFLA, we're amplifying our efforts by becoming foundation members of the Climate Heritage Network, which was launched in 2019. And this Climate Heritage Network is a voluntary mutual support network of arts, culture and heritage organisations committed to aiding their communities in tackling climate change and achieving the ambitions of the Paris Agreement. The Climate Action Network highlights that cultural heritage is a climate action issue, and climate action is a cultural heritage issue. In September and October last year, the IFLA Regional Office for Asia and Oceania and the National Library Board of Singapore presented a series of conversations about libraries in the post-COVID world. And these conversations covered national, public and academic libraries, and I was honoured to be part of the discussions. Library leaders from around the region, including Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia, China, Indonesia, the Philippines, as well as the British Library, participated. And the participants described what was happening in their libraries and how they were managing through the pandemic, and also what they think the future will look like. After participating in all 3 conversations with national, public and academic library leaders, there seems to be a number of common themes emerging. We're working together more and sharing information. We're increasing our innovation and creativity. Librarians are upskilling. There's a new appreciation of libraries. We're being seen as partners. 2020 has highlighted the changing role of libraries. Buildings are being adapted, and there are serious concerns about resourcing into the future. 4 years ago, IFLA developed a global vision for libraries, and highlight 7 of the global vision is that we see the need to build collaboration and partnerships. We recognise that working collaboratively amongst ourselves and in partnership with those outside is essential for creating a strong, united library field. And the opportunity is that we need to develop a spirit of collaboration, understanding and addressing actual and perceived barriers to collaboration, will help end a tendency to work in isolation and realise the vision of a united library field. We know we need to cooperate and work with like-minded organisations to achieve our plans. And this is one of the reasons I'm so pleased to be able to join you today, because all cultural heritage organisations need to work together. I'll now talk about some of the initiatives IFLA is involved in to maximise access to the world's documentary heritage. IFLA has always worked closely with Unesco, and the involvement ranges from the Memory of the World programme, the Information for All programme, the World Book Capital City series, and the conventions of the UNESCO cultural sector. And we also participate actively in expert advice groups for the safeguarding of cultural heritage at risk, and as we're a member of the Libraries, Archives, Museums, Monuments and Sites Coordinating Council. Some of the current IFLA initiatives include guidelines for setting up a digital unification project. This publication was launched in 2019 and it provides a comprehensive and easy to use checklist for anyone setting up such a project. Rather than prescribing specific actions, the focus is on ensuring that all relevant questions have been taken into account, allowing libraries to find a way forward best adapted to their needs. And another example is the UNESCO Persist guidelines for the selection of digital heritage for long-term preservation. Just a few days ago, the IFLA Governing Board signed off on the draft second edition of this document. Since the release of the guidelines 5 years ago, much has changed in the digital world, and both content and technologies make significant advances every day, raising serious challenges for heritage institutions and other information organisations working to select, preserve and access the documentary heritage output of the world. It's impossible to preserve everything, so choices need to be made in order to ensure the long-term accessibility of the most significant digital heritage. And the second edition of the guidelines looks to reflect these changes, taking into account new forms of heritage and offering further details on key questions. And I've already talked about our involvement in the Climate Heritage Network. So these are just 3 projects that IFLA is involved in to work for the preservation and restoration of cultural heritage. I'm also pleased to say that IFLA was involved in the World Day for Audiovisual Heritage in October last year, and that IFLA has rejoined the Coordinating Council of Audiovisual Archives Associations. The 2020 theme, Your Window to the World, highlighted that audiovisual materials as documentary heritage objects provide a window to the world as we observe events we cannot attend. We hear voices from the past who can no longer speak, and we craft stories that inform and entertain. And that was really illustrated, I think, with Lydia's clips from the Shanghai when they were moving. That was amazing. But I know that I'm indeed preaching to the converted here, and I'm glad that we're back on board with you. The pandemic has highlighted serious inequalities in access to online resources, and an important recent initiative for IFLA is the Library Pledge for Digital Inclusion. And this sets out libraries' readiness to promote maximum connectivity, access to content, skills support, and to advocate for public access. Over 500 associations, institutions, and individuals have already signed the pledge. And IFLA has also worked with like-minded organisations to develop a call for action, Libraries in Response, Every Community Connected. This calls on governments to support investment in wider connectivity and also investment in the libraries that help users access online information. And the document's been presented at the United Nations and also at Internet Governance Forum events. And its purpose is to gather support and consensus for putting libraries at the heart of efforts to ensure meaningful connectivity and to respond to the pandemic. One of the themes that came out of the Singapore summit was the concern about resourcing going forward, and I'm sure that all you in the archives world are very concerned about this as well. We all know the huge impact the pandemic has had on economic activity and on government finances. And there are clear and present dangers for cultural institutions. The impact on libraries, particularly in the UK and the USA, is being reported on in the mainstream press. But there's also some cause for hope, and at least in Australia and New Zealand, additional funds are being provided to libraries in recognition of the important role they play in community wellbeing. And I think advocacy is key here for all of us as we look for funding. We've got a great example here in Australia. The National Archives of Australia has just had a very high profile campaign, which appears to have been quite successful in getting additional funding. And so from my presentation, I hope that you've all got some ideas of where libraries at IFLA are currently and how we're managing during these times. I know you're proud of the collegiality and sharing culture of your group, and in Noumea, I heard it being described as a family a number of times. I was very happy to be part of this welcoming family gathering, and I hope that we can continue to have even greater future collaboration between libraries and audiovisual archives. Thank you for the organisers for the invitation to join this conference, and I do hope that we will meet again. We're all missing the face-to-face interactions and meetings that are such an important part of our professional lives, for knowledge sharing, for learning and for networking. But in the meantime, meeting virtually is good too. My presidential theme is let's work together. We need to work together to strengthen the voice of libraries and archives. If we work together to share our innovative practices and do all we can to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, then we go a long way to ensuring the sustainability of libraries and cultural and memory institutions. Thanks for your attention. I hope you all stay safe. And I'd love to invite you too to IFLA's first virtual conference in August. It would be really great if you can join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine, for the wonderful presentation. And so I believe right now, I mean, we will invite any questions any of the participants may have. I guess I'd probably just like to start off maybe with a question for Christine. I'm just wondering if you could share any maybe one or two concrete ways in which you've seen libraries and archives working together successfully in the last year or so. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Well, I know just on the advocacy front, I know that the libraries in Australia were very supportive and really worked with the National Archives. There was a big campaign because the National Archives are in a very difficult position with funding, and I know that the libraries in Australia and all the cultural institutions joined together to really advocate for that. So I think that's at a fairly high level, but I think that whole advocacy we really needed, as I say before, to work together to make sure that we can do the best for our cultural institutions. I'm afraid I can't think of any other particular example at the moment. I've been so immersed in the library world, I guess that I haven't had so much to do with the archives. I did attend the Archives conference in Adelaide in 2019, and I just find the way that archivists look at the world is a bit different from the way that librarians look at the world. And it's interesting to me that the things that you're focused on and the things we're focused on, they're not the same, but in the end that we are all preserving our cultural heritage. So yes.
I mean, I was really quite inspired by, I guess, Lydia's presentation about how, you know, they created this really interesting, really inspiring initiative to actually help to, you know, preserve the archivist profession and allow them to continue working from home. I'm just wondering if the libraries also had the same issue, and what kind of were there any sort of measures that you've learned about that maybe certain libraries have taken on, or certain of the members have implemented?
Yeah, that was really interesting. That was really interesting because at the beginning with the lockdowns, a lot of libraries really wanted to stay open because they saw that they were essential for the community's well-being. But then there was also this tension about the staff staying safe and the community staying safe. I mean, in the end, there was quite a debate in the library world around it, but in the end, the government's just stepped in anyway and said, no, you're closing. So it took that away. But libraries have been very quick to say we didn't close our doors. We might have had to close our physical buildings, but the move to online services has really, really gone ahead, and the lending of ebooks, the provision of things like online story times. So as I was talking about in those themes from the Singapore summit, the librarians have really had to upskill because they've had to think of new ways of doing things. And a lot of staff, a lot of libraries staff weren't that confident, or that they were concerned about doing things online, but they learned, and now they're all doing it. And so we've really had to, I know the provision of reference services, academic support, or everything that we've had to do online. It's really accelerated, I think, our innovation and how we think about doing things. And that was why I suppose I spent a bit of time talking about this, the importance of the digital inclusion, because the gap the pandemic's made the gap worse. As more and more becomes digital, and there are more people who can't access it. We had stories of families, you know, they had 2 or 3 kids and they're trying to do their online schooling on a mobile phone, one mobile phone. And I guess that would be happening in a number of places. So libraries really see their role as promoting that digital inclusion and acknowledging the speed of which the digital's being taken up.
We've got a question from June Pok from the National Archives of Singapore. It's for either speakers, actually. So she made a comment that the pandemic has pushed for more digital initiatives, but it also highlighted, I think you mentioned a little bit earlier as well, it highlighted the digital divide between the have and have-nots. And so how has the archives and all the libraries made their collections accessible to those people who may not have the IT devices or could not, you know, visit the libraries or the archives during the pandemic?
Oh, well, I can have a go at that too. I know some libraries were leaving their Wi-Fi switched on, and so people could go to their car parks and use Wi-Fi, because a lot of people, even here in Australia, you know, a rich developed country, relied on public libraries for access to the internet and to online resources and things. So that was one way that libraries could help. And I guess that's one of the things that people really missed about the physical libraries not being open too, that opportunity to actually go in. But perhaps Ellen might have some other comments.
Yeah, I think she's still in. Is Ellen in? I can see her. There's actually some few questions from Ellen. There's a question from Dr. Ray Edmondson for Ellen. He would like to find out how did the Shanghai Audiovisual Archives cope with COVID, and whether or not staff could work remotely.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah. So
actually, we my my video device didn't working well, so I
okay,
can
we can
tell
hear
you. Yeah. You mean 他是说什么?
how did the archives cope with COVID at that time? So are staff allowed to work remotely, or what did the archives actually operate during that time?
No. Actually, our society now function well, so we can go to the office to work. We don't need to work remotely.
But during the peak of the pandemic, during
the peak of the pandemic, actually we have few staffs go to the office and others left at home. But it's only a very short time, 3 weeks. About 3 weeks, and now we work normally.
We have a question. This is actually from my colleague at the Asia Film Archive, actually. So this question is actually for Ellen. Yesterday, there was a presentation from the NHK archives, which is in Japan. Nobuki-san, who shared that the archive is actually utilizing some colorization technology for some of their AV materials, which actually help them identify certain rankings of army officials. I'm not sure if you managed to have a look at that presentation, but I'm just wondering maybe if you might have any thoughts regarding this, and could this be a technology the Shanghai Audiovisual Archives may consider adopting if it hasn't been?
We're doing experiment.
Yes, we are doing experiments in utilizing colorizations technology, but I'm not working in the technology department, so maybe you can left your email address and I will tell my colleagues to answer your question.
Okay. We have another question for Christine. This is from Karen Chan from the Asia Film Archive as well. So she's made a comment that it's true that archives and libraries look at things differently, but there are also many cases in different countries where library and archives have merged. From your perspective, do you think this might bring more positives or otherwise from such mergers?
Oh yes, I didn't mean to mean that we had a lot of things dividing us. I just think we do look at things the same way, but at the very heart of what we're doing, isn't it? It's to preserve our cultural, intellectual heritage and our documentary heritage, and that's what we're on about, and providing access to it, not just preserving it, providing access to it. And I think we have a lot in common, of course we do, and I was just trying to highlight, perhaps I was assuming that we all agreed on that, and that and just perhaps trying to highlight a bit the different ways that we look at things. But yeah, absolutely, we have a lot in common, including the same challenges around resourcing, the same, yeah.
I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. There is a question from Nosriati from the National Archives of Malaysia. This is for Ellen. She's wondering if you could share some of the audiovisual archival programs and whether or not there is very specific target groups.
Specific target groups.
Yes, we can. And you can also see the details of our application in our platform. Target group.
As in, like whether or not there's the programs, you have specific target groups for the program, for specific programs.
对，针对特定观众群的项目，我们有没有这种？
Yeah, that's true.
我们有吗？ Actually, no.
It's quite general audience, I guess.
应该会有针对就是进校园啊，或者是进社区啊。
Yes, we have such programs. We have
Screening programs.
We have screening programs to the communities and to the universities and to some elementary schools. But different departments do specific project.
Sorry. So I guess that really brings the session to the end. And on behalf of SEAPAVAA, really like to thank Christine and Ellen, and of course Lydia, who come here with us today. But it was such an interesting presentation as well. So I think the next session, Symposium 7, is on collaborations between archives, actually. So it will be quite interesting. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and I hope you have a great day ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tee Pao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.